This episode is brought to you by Conflict of Nations, the popular free online strategy game. Conflict of Nations is set in the early 21st century and features modern-day weapons and technology. To have the edge over the enemy teams, you can build the right infrastructure and research new units, such as nuclear ballistic submarines, combat attack helicopters, stealth strike fighters, airborne infantry units, and many more. Join a community of millions of people and fight up to 64 other players in real-time games that can take weeks to complete. I'll be hosting a special Conflict of Nations game for the first viewers that click the link in the description. Create a profile, type Simple History in the search bar, and enter the password Simple History. The slots are limited, so don't miss out. It's fully cross-platform, so you can play on the same account on PC and mobile. And Simple History viewers get a special gift when they use the link below: 13,000 gold and 1 month of premium subscription for free. This offer is only available for 30 days, so click the link, choose a country, and start fighting your way to victory in epic battles right now. Hull down position. Tank tactic. When they first appeared in the First World War, tanks spread fear across the battlefield. It was, however, only during World War II that tank warfare reached its full potential. This was the first conflict that saw a massive utilization of tanks in combat, and even full-scale tank battles. In the period between the two world wars, the development of tank tactics and their employment in combat has gone a long way, and only continued to evolve even more in the years after. During World War II, tank commanders mastered the full spectrum of formations, maneuvers, and the tactical utilization of tanks in both offensive and defensive positions. One of the most common tactics was the so-called hull-down position. This position is still in use in tank combat today. In a hull-down position, the tank commander exposed only the turret of his tank to the enemy's line of sight, in a manner that his main gun had a clear line of fire. The aim was to reduce the silhouette of the tank as much as possible, exposing only the areas with the strongest armor. In order to obtain a successful hull-down position, the tank's main gun had to be operational. Being a static maneuver, the hull-down position was used for defensive operations. These were usually tanks deployed in defense lines awaiting enemy tanks to arrive. Placing the tank in the hull-down position was principally achieved by exploiting the features of the terrain. This was achieved in several ways. The most common way to achieve the hull-down position, which at the same time was the most effective, was to place a tank on the back slope of a hill, an embankment, or any other elevation found on the field. The tank assumed the position just below the top of the elevation, only to have the upper part of the turret exposed. The main gun was put at the lowest elevation angle in order to shoot at the enemy. Paradoxically, the hull-down position could be achieved by the tank if it was standing on top of the hill. This position was taken only against enemy tanks that were moving up the slope. The tank on the top needed to stand a few feet behind the edge of the slope in order to conceal its most vulnerable area, the belly armor, from the enemy's sights. The tank on the top also needed to have a pretty low elevation angle for its main gun in order to shoot below its level. In case of a lack of proper elevation to hide behind, a tank commander could use a depression in the battlefield, such as a bomb crater that was big enough to place his tank in a hull-down position. When in a properly digged-in depression, the tank's entire hull was concealed, except for some parts of the upper surface. Even though this position provided the least cover for the tank, it allowed the greatest radius of operation for the main gun. Yet another way to conceal the hull as the most vulnerable part of the tank was to position the tank behind some sort of cover. The cover needed to be high enough to hide the hull and at the same time strong enough to withstand the impact of the enemy shells. Out in the field, this could be rocks, while in urban areas, tanks could hide behind a number of street elements, such as walls. Apart from all the advantages, the hull-down position tactic still had a few drawbacks. Firstly, it was not applicable to all terrain situations and not ideal for every type of tank. Only tanks with a sufficient negative elevation of the main gun were able to get the most out of the tactic. Another drawback was the static nature of the position, since the tank had to remain in a hull-down position all the time, trying not to expose itself. This increased the possibility of the enemy outmaneuvering the tank and putting it in danger. The biggest problem occurred in cases when a tank commander decided to switch from the defensive and go on the offensive, and tried to leave the hull-down position in a forward motion. Crossing the top of the elevation would first expose the tank's bottom, the most vulnerable part of every tank. At the same time, the gunner was denied a clear view of the enemy. With all its pros and cons, the hull-down position was and still is one of the most effective ways of organizing a static defense against incoming enemy tank units. A well-positioned tank platoon in a hull-down position was able to hold up and eliminate a more numerous enemy. Don't forget, use the link in the description to play Conflict of Nations and get 1,300 gold plus a month of premium subscription for free. Viewers can join the huge Conflict of Nations community on Discord. Start fighting your way to victory in epic battles right now.